Hey everybody, welcome back. And we're just going to go ahead here and continue where we left off in the last lesson by exporting our geometry out. We're now ready to go ahead and re-import that geometry into Maya. So we'll just come up here to File, Import, and we'll just go ahead here and select our geometry. We'll start here with the Barracuda decimated body, and this will just take a second or two to bring in that decimated geometry. Okay, we'll go ahead and select that geometry. I am going to create a new layer and assign the selected object to that layer. We'll go ahead and rename it. So we'll call this the Barra underscore Deci, just so we know exactly what it is, and it's not really going to confuse us at all. So we can go ahead and basically select that a little bit easier understanding of what exactly it is. Let's go ahead here and import our Barracuda eyes from ZBrush. So here you see that these come in, and this is going to allow us to go ahead here and let me go ahead and just delete this right one because we only really need the left one. This will allow us to snap our created eyes inside of Maya to this whenever we're ready to go ahead and create the eye. Let me go ahead and just add that to its own layer, and I'm just going to call this the ZBrush underscore eye. Okay, and we'll go ahead here and import our Barracuda body load geometry that we had ZBrush retopologize for us. Okay, and if we take a look here, let me go ahead and just turn off our Barracuda decimated body. You can see that our tail here is, at least a little bit off, so we definitely are going to have to fix this. But I've already gone ahead and actually made a scene for us to start doing the retopology. So I'm just going to go ahead here and reset my project, and I'll go ahead and open up our original, or what we'll be using here to go ahead and do the retopology. Okay, and let me just go ahead and make sure that I fix this real quick. Actually, go ahead and make sure I delete that right eye. I'm going to go ahead and remove this eye from this layer. Go ahead and rename this layer as our Barra Deci. Okay, we'll go ahead and add our eye here. And we'll call this the ZBrush eye. Okay, so now we're ready to go ahead and do the retopology. You can see that I'm doing the retopology here in Maya 2011. And I'm going to use a specific plugin for Maya 2011, which is going to be next. But with Maya 2014, you now have the poly tools, so you don't necessarily have to buy a plugin like I did. It's basically the same sort of poly tools that I'll be using compared to Maya 2014. Okay, so first things I want to go ahead and do here is just delete the one half of the Barracuda mesh. I'm just going to jump into the front here so I can select and make sure that I'm only selecting one side of this mesh for certain. I'll just double check here in the top, making sure that I'm selecting only one side, because I don't want to have the problem of actually selecting the other side here as well. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just delete that one side because we'll just go ahead and mirror that back over. And I just want to make sure that I get everything right before I actually start doing retopology. Okay. Alright, so let's start here with the retopology process. And I'm going to need to load my plugin. And you can do this simply by coming into Window, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager. But I've made a shortcut on my shelf here. And I'll just select the plugin manager, come down here, and I am going to load D-Raster Maya, which is the next plugin for Maya. Let me go ahead and just pull this off. Bring back my decimated mesh. I'm going to go ahead and select objects. I'm going to make the object a sliding surface constraint, and then I'm going to enable that sliding surface constraint. Select my mesh, and I am going to turn on quad draw. This is going to allow me to basically draw quads on my mesh, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull that off screen so that you guys can see this and watch me do this 100%. So I'll just start here with deleting some faces. Okay, and we'll just simply start editing some of the mesh. Make sure that I change the color here so it's going to be easier for you guys to see. Okay, and the idea here is just, basically draw yourself some solid quads. This way it's going to be pretty even distributed, and you want to try to make this as clean and as nice as possible. And this will just take a little bit of time to go ahead and do. Okay. And I'm also going to have to work on the mouth here. So it just takes a little bit of time to go in and do your retopology. Shouldn't be too much of a headache to go ahead and do that, and we can probably delete this row of faces as well, just to make it that much easier on ourselves. And the idea here is just to make sure that you draw quads to the point where it's going to be just that much easier to not only rig, but it's also going to be easy to UV map, because we have to get all that texture information outside of ZBrush as well. So we're just going to basically build through the process here. And I'm just trying to line this stuff up at least somewhat properly. You can always adjust as you work through. And you can really see the lines on the mesh, so this really shouldn't be that much of a headache to go ahead and retopologize. And I do believe the poly tools in Maya 2014 are actually a little bit easier to maybe understand, and it might make it easier for you guys to actually do the retopology process. And you can see where we did have a great start from ZBrush whenever we did the retopology, which makes it just that much easier for us to go ahead and get all this work done. And I'm just trying to right now make sure that I get all this quad geometry laid out the way that I want. Okay. I'll also be covering the texturing process too, but we'll be using a different model for that. I'm just walking you guys through here the retopology, just this way you guys can understand exactly how to draw out your retopology. And it's really not that difficult of a process. It's fairly straightforward. It'll just take a little bit of time for you guys to get that retopology done. And it's definitely a necessary thing, because you want to make sure that your geometry is going to work properly, and it's going to deform the way that you expect it to. So here I think we can go ahead and turn back on our eye. And I'm just going to try to make sure that all this geometry lines up the way that I expect it to. I can probably draw another quad in there, but I want to make sure here that this geometry is going to work for myself. So I'm just shaping and shaping and shaping and shaping, and it really shouldn't take that much effort to go ahead and get done. when I draw in those new edges, you'll notice that the edges actually snap to the mesh, and that's what we want, because we want to make sure that our retopology mesh is really matching the underlying mesh as much as it possibly can. I want to make sure that we have, you know, no creases or anything. We'll also be painting the mesh inside of ZBrush as well. And we can probably, let me go ahead and delete that. I'm not real happy with that face right there. Okay. Just want to make sure that this edge is going to flow correctly there. And sometimes, you know, you just have to spend a little bit of extra time, you know, doing the retopology process, and that's okay. No big deal. It's fairly easy to go ahead and do. Anyway, I think we're probably going to need a couple extra edges here as well. Okay. Let's go ahead here and do the retopology for the mouth. And you'll notice that I'm trying to make this a round geometry flow. This way I can add edge loops fairly easy, and then it's going to maintain that shape just that much easier. Oops. This just gets a little bit tricky, especially whenever these faces are so close together. So I'm going to have to draw these one side at a time, which really isn't much of a problem. To go ahead and pull these up here as well, and just making sure that all these edges are basically gonna look like they're interconnecting. This way it'll make it much easier for us to actually draw the inside portion of the mouth, even though I won't necessarily be rigging for the inside of the mouth or for talking, because this fish isn't necessarily going to be talking in the video, and his animation isn't going to be set up for actually talking, so we won't really need, you know, all your phenom shapes, but we'll need at least a decent amount of control for the facial animation. So I'll still have to draw that inside portion of the mouth and the mouth sac, but we just won't be animating the actual facial animation. Okay, so let's go ahead here. We can, oops, I actually moved the back portion of the mesh there. Just be careful and mindful that you guys actually don't do that, because sometimes the poly tools, I do believe in Maya, will still allow you to select the back face of the model. And we just have to adjust as we can here. And you'll notice here that I'm actually modeling the mouth at least a little bit open, and that's because it's going to make it easier for myself to go ahead and rig. It's not open an extreme amount, but it's going to be open at least a little bit at all times. But with, you know, the rigging, I can really go ahead and control that. So we just need to make sure that we get all this stuff set up properly. And I'm making sure here that I at least get the lips modeled here in a way where it's going to make it really easy for myself to go ahead and make the mouth sac of the model. And that's really the idea here, is, you know, make it as easy as you can on yourself. Don't necessarily give yourself a hard time, but do it properly, because you never know when you're going to actually run into a problem, and you kind of don't actually want to have any problems. I don't think you should. I think you should really just do it right all the time. And we'll have to pull this up here a little bit. Okay. You can see here where the underlying geometry is a little bit off, but that's okay. We can go ahead and fix that. That's not really going to be much of a problem. But I just want to make sure I get everything lined up properly here before I start making the mouth sac. Okay, so looks like we have our mouth geometry pretty much modeled here. Let me go ahead and throw in a couple extra edge loops so I can get and make sure that lip geometry is working the way that I want it to. Okay. And you can see within about 17-18 minutes we've gone ahead and gotten the retopology done really easily. So now what I want to do is just make sure that this is going to be able to be mirrored correctly. So I'm going to go ahead here and select all the vertices on the edge, and to do this we'll go ahead and just into our side or front view here, and I actually didn't select anything there. Still didn't select anything. Okay, so there I think we got them. Just making sure that I don't select anything that I don't want. Go ahead and turn off that decimation mesh. Okay. So that looks good there. And we'll go ahead and just straighten that all out. And let's just take a look here. Looks like it's all proper there for the most part. Okay, so at this point we can go ahead here and mirror that geometry. Let's go ahead and turn off our decimation, select our geometry. Let's go ahead and mirror it here. And you can see here where it's being mirrored properly, but the edge loops here aren't actually attached, so we're going to need to fix this. And I'll just go ahead here and turn off my next plugin. Well, I'll have to go ahead and restart Maya to do that. So in the next lesson I'll go ahead and end this lesson. Then in the next lesson we'll go ahead and come back and we'll mirror our geometry and we'll get everything set up so that we can then go into the UV mapping portion of our model. So come on back.